What follows is my interview with Mark Bowden. Who he is and what he does you will hear in the interview, but for now let's just say he's one of the world's leading subject matter experts when it comes to body language and nonverbal communication. What makes Mark especially interesting is the fact that he trains and coaches the creme de la creme of the business world, as well as the political leaders of nation-states. One of the items I always cover when discussing nonverbal communication with people like Mark are the many and deep ingrained stereotypical but incorrect deception cues that so many people, including some professionals, believe in. Imagine, as Mark says, you're wrong when you're in a situation where the truth really matters, where lives or careers, whether your own or from others, depend on you being right, and you're wrong simply because you fell for some of the incorrect deception cues that are so widely propagated in popular literature. In the interview, we have addressed some of these myths, and if this topic interests you, you can find more information about them on SaltCubeAnalytics.com. While the nature of truth and lies was at the center of our conversation, we also looked at the question of why people so often prefer to accept a deceit instead of accepting that they have been deceived. Meaning, we humans are prone to accept someone's lies even if evidence to the contrary is painfully obvious. In psychology, we call this the truth bias. This bias is responsible for the fact that incoming information that could point us to a lie or alert us of being deceived is simply filtered out. Interestingly, Mark confirmed what other experts that I've interviewed, including some former FBI agents and military interrogators, have said too. The most effective way of detecting deception is building rapport, building an atmosphere of trust, and use that trust to elicit information, and that's true even in an interrogation or criminal context. In a nutshell, reading body language is nothing like reading a book. It involves multiple disciplines such as psychology, sociology, and evolutionary psychology, to name just a few, and there are no shortcuts. This being said, I'm sure you will find some nuggets in the interview that you can apply directly in your next interaction, no matter if at home or in business. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, lean back, and enjoy.
Now, usually I try to avoid superlatives, right? In your case, Mark, it's a bit difficult, right? You are on a first-name basis with the presidents of with some presidents of the Fortune 500 companies and prime ministers of the G7 nations. I think the emphasis is here on plural, prime ministers, right? The TED Talk from Toronto, last time I checked, almost had 3 million views. And interestingly, there is another TED Talk, there's another upload from the same TED Talk with another 500,000 views. Yeah, so quite an achievement here on that alone. Then we have, of course, your YouTube show, The Behavior Panel. And this morning it had exactly 35,092,283 viewers, and this is only since 2020. I mean, really, really remarkable. Then, of course, you have written some books, 4 books to be precise, Winning Body Language, which I have also in digital version here, right? And somewhere in my books I have it also, but as a hard copy, but in digital version you can do easy research, right? So it's advantage. So winning body language for the general public, so to speak, and winning body language for sales, right? Then a very interesting book, Tame the Primitive Brain. And then the last one, Truth and Lies, What People Really Are Thinking. And if I am not mistaken, usually you have the cover behind you. I can't see it right now.
Well, let me hold up that one for you.
There you go. Very good, very good. Yeah. Now, in addition, you are the founder of the communications training company TruthFul, right? And I've also seen that in the age of COVID, you are now training even the guys from Zoom themselves, right? So, Mark, welcome. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks very much, Thomas. Thanks for having me here. I'm very well. I sit here all day, every day, where you're watching me right now, and I'm happy to be here with you today. What can I help with? What can I answer for you?
I will come to my questions in a moment, but I think in the age of COVID, for you as a public speaker, that must be a difficult time. How did you adjust your business plan in regards to this absolutely new situation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. How did I adjust? Quickly, for a start. I was in a hotel in Costa Rica when this whole kind of crisis hit, and the Prime Minister of Canada said, Canadians come home. And I was there for a few more days, and essentially I wrote on this piece of paper here my training for how to present how to use your body language on camera. And it's never changed since I wrote it down in the hotel, and it's pinned up here. Yeah. And so, I got back straight away and started contacting clients and going, you're going to be in front of a camera now for a long, long, long time. Some of them paid attention to me and some didn't. And those that did, we started training immediately on how to do this really well. So that's really how I coped with it.
Yeah. I saw that you do a number of smaller series now. I think it was Truth or Lies, something like that, right? Very interesting. Tell us.
Yeah, so myself and Tracy, who co-wrote this book, we sat down together over a number of days and filmed, I guess, Mythbusters. There are lots of myths out there about nonverbal communication, body language. And we recorded some busting of those myths so that there are some fundamentals that people out there who are interested in nonverbal communication and body language, some fundamentals that they don't have to get wrong by searching in odd places on the internet with odd experts telling them things that maybe aren't quite correct.
Definitely, and that's definitely a point that I would like to discuss with you. Maybe before I do that, let me briefly set the stage for this interaction here, right? So I'm especially interested in body language, but more specifically in deception detection in the corporate context, and to be more specific, in negotiations, right? Now I'm completely with you. There are no universally agreed upon or even valid deception cues. So Pinocchio's nose, in the classical sense, does not exist, right? But there are. So first of all, and I have done my own research on this. Deception happen in negotiations, right? There's no question. It happens on many different layers, on many different levels. I think in America, you just had the Theranos scandal, right, with Elizabeth Holmes. I think she was on trial. I don't know if she was already convicted. I don't know. In Germany, there was the Wirecard scandal, right? Not to talk about Bernie Madoff. And I think about this guy, I sometimes think this guy must have lived in terror for the last, I don't know how many years, yeah? How can you cope with this? How is this? How don't you, radiate this kind of terror? What's your point of this?
Yeah, okay, so deception and lying is one of our most important social skills, as is telling the truth. And so the key to be a good member of society, or a very well accepted member of society, whatever society you're part of, is knowing when to be deceptive and when to tell the truth, knowing when to accept a deception, and knowing when to accept a truth. If you don't know when to deliver deception or the truth, or accept deception or the truth, you won't get on very well with people. In the case of, for example, Madoff, many of his investors maybe wanted to accept a deception which for many of us would be too good to be true. Theranos, again, many of the investors wanted to accept a deception that for many of us, because we're not part of that society, I'm not part of the family office society. I don't have millions and millions of dollars to invest in something which is relatively potentially speculative or early days. So I'm not in the society that needs to accept the deceptions or accept the truths of that. So for me, I look at that and go, well, it just looked very, very risky. No wonder you lost your money. I mean, it just looks incredibly, incredibly beyond belief and risky. And many analysts out there who aren't investors, they're analysts, were looking at this going, well, that looks odd. I mean, that can't be true. However, very intelligent investors going, no, I think this is going to be good. Well, they're accepting a deceit, because it's much better to accept the deceit and do the gamble than accept the potential lie. So look, we have to understand the nature of truth and lies, that they not have a moral judgment on them, but more a sociological judgment on them. The stories that we tell ourselves are, be they accurate, inaccurate, truth or lies, are really important. Hope that makes sense, Thomas.
It makes sense, absolutely. Coming back to the stereotypical deception cues, right? And I think one scientist, which we can't skip over here, is Mehrabian. And Mehrabian, I don't know exactly how you pronounce it in English. Yeah,
I would say Morabian.
Morabian.
Yeah, but I may be pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to, his research, I think, was from 1967, right? And it was only based on 2 studies. He himself, and he's still alive to my surprise, but I checked his website, he himself tries on his website to kind of remedy this absolute misquoting of his study. Maybe you want to comment on this one.
Yeah, look, whether his study was a great study or could have been better science, or, probably now we'd want more numbers in there, more people involved. What was probably back then quite good science may not be good science right now. But that given, the science that he did back then is constantly misquoted, or the spirit of it is incorrectly kind of gauged. Here's what my understanding is, the outcome from his experiments. Okay? My understanding of it is that when we are getting theory of mind around another person. So look, we're not mind readers. No human being is a mind reader, though often we feel like we are. Okay? We get what's called theory of mind. We get an idea. And I think what Morabian was saying was, we get the majority of our idea about what somebody else is thinking, feeling, and intending from how they look, what they're doing, and the environment that they're in, their context. Okay? Whether that's gestures in their hands, or their arms, or their body, or in their face, or the environment by which or how they're sitting. The majority of the information that our brain wants in order to make a judgment is visual. Okay? Then it wants some kind of sound backup. Okay, it wants to go, well, what's the inflection of the voice, or what other sounds are around? So it mainly wants to see, it partially wants to hear, and really what somebody is saying, it's not that concerned with. To the extent that if it sees and hears something that looks and sounds very different from what somebody is saying at an emotional level, feeling and intention level, it sides with the image and the sound rather than the words. Okay? That for me is the spirit of what he was saying. Absolutely not that 93% of all communication is non-verbal, is body language. No, nonsense. I mean, I don't know who came up with that idea. Many people. That's just silly. I mean, it doesn't. Like, how would you read a book? It's, Yeah. Anyway, I hope that makes sense to you, Thomas.
Definitely. If only 7% of our communication would rely on verbal communication, the overall sense would rely on verbal communication, we would never, as a species, we would never have developed language, right? It's just amazing, and this goes back to the point of stereotypical deception cues. Yeah, some of them are so ingrained in popular culture, even to the level of professionals, that it's very hard to get it out. So Mehrabian's, 93% is non-verbal, is everywhere, right? I'm pretty sure you're familiar. There is a group called the Global Deception Research Team. Yeah,
I don't know them, but or they don't ring a bell with me. But
okay, it's I think 100 or 200 scientists. They have done research in regards to stereotypical deception cues in 75 countries and 43 languages. And the number one, it's 75% again from all these populations they investigated, considered when you cannot look somebody in the eyes is a deception cue. This is so ingrained in our culture, right? So how do you address this in your engagements with the public? You as a professional,
Well, but I mean, by kind of busting that myth, essentially. Yes, and I remember you sending me the science around that from that particular group, and it is extraordinary that pretty much across the planet, many people are going, if somebody doesn't look you in the eye, they're most likely being deceptive. Well, that is going to be accurate until it isn't. And who knows when it isn't accurate, and who knows when it is. Like, how you can, and you better, like, if that is quite often inaccurate, like, you better not be banking on that signal on anything worth a lot of money, because what if you lose? Imagine it's somebody's life that you're negotiating. Like, what if you're wrong about that? So you better have based this on something a little better than hearsay and an internet search. If they don't look you in the. And here's what we do know. I think it may well be Aldous Ridge noted, also another group noted that liars tend to look you in the eye really well.
Exactly.
I mean, There may well be Bridge, maybe somebody else.
True.
Well, so how are you going to deal with that? So liars either don't look at you or look you in the eye. Oh, okay. Well, now you've got a problem, haven't you? Now, which one is it? Which one is it? Well, it's none of those. It's none of those, and all of the possibilities. So, look, what we look for when we're reading body language, and that is a terrible metaphor, but it's the one that we all use. Okay, even experts will go, okay, so reading body language, because it's easier for the public to get involved with. They go, oh, you read it, so that's like a book, isn't it? Well, no, reading body language is nothing like a book, because reading a book, like, I know this book will be the same book tomorrow. I know it won't change unless I rip pages out or mark it up. This will be exactly the same tomorrow. Somebody's behaviors and what they do in a certain situation could change tomorrow, simply because the brain is not a computer. Again, the metaphor of the brain is like a computer, or the similes. No, it's nothing like that. Has nothing to do with that, in that it keeps on changing. You wake up different the next morning. So you can't really read body language like you read a book. What you're trying to do is you're trying to look for indicators. You're trying to critically think and take in more data, and you're understanding that you will have imposed a whole bunch of judgments on a situation. You're looking to suspend your judgments about that. You're trying to analyze data, and you're trying to get closer to the truth of what's going on. And then you test it. You test your new assumption. Okay, I would call that critical thinking. So look, what I'm trying to do as an expert is have more vocabulary than most other people. I can detect potentially more signals because I've maybe explored more than most other people. So I've got a bigger vocabulary, a bigger range of signals to choose from. I bring all of those together, and then I start the critical thinking process. I come up with a new assumption because I've put my old assumption on a shelf, okay, and then I test that assumption. And if I were negotiating, that's what I'd be trying to do at the same time as cognitively negotiating as well.
Which is really, really demanding. Yeah. So
super demanding.
On one side, you're really engaged in, I wouldn't even say negotiation yet. At the beginning, it's just conversation. Yeah. But it's also at the very beginning that you try to get a picture of who is who. Yeah. Also in the hierarchy, etc., etc. So to do this, and this is also what I wonder, how do you do this on your shows, right? To do this mental step back, and then do this limited amount of analysis that you can do in this context, especially if you meet new people at the very beginning, and maybe you have a room full of 10 people, yeah, which are new to you. It's difficult, but that leads me to a question I wanted to run by you: baseline, right? Yeah. So it's usually assumed that the best thing you can do, and maybe we do this in the context of the example that I already used, the eye movements, right? Create a baseline, see what the person does under normal circumstances, and then look what's changing under a stress situation, right? That's the general opinion here. Yeah? But is that not, and this is my question to you, is that not kind of, comparing apples with oranges? Because you need to compare a stressful situation behavior with stressful situation behavior, not a low stress situation with a high stress situation. So you would have conflicting cues. What's your take on this?
Yeah, you're right. So in a perfect world, you're going to build the baseline, and you might baseline various environments. So for example, we could get a general baseline on you're being accurate with me by me going, so hey Thomas, how did you get here today? Or I might, in your situation right now, because my guess is that you're in your own home right now, I might say to you, hey, so what's in the room underneath you right now? Because I guess you're up in the roof area. What's underneath? And I would start maybe looking at, how your eyes start exploring your mind to gain the picture of that. So, but the stress level on that, apart from Wise Mark asking me these kind of weird questions, the stress level will be fairly low. And in a negotiation situation, I could fit it into what we might call phatic conversation, customary conversation of, hey, how was your journey here? Oh, and you'll go, hey, it was fine. I go, so what route did you take? And so I might, but you're right, I'm not getting a stressful baseline. I'm going to get a baseline on when you're just remembering factual stuff. Now, would I want to baseline some stress? Could do. I could go, were there any problems on the way? Did you get into any trouble on the way? Yeah, and so maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But I might be able to get you into a story about a stressful situation, and I might be able to baseline, hey, what do you do? What do you do in a stressful situation? And so over time, I'm building some ideas, not perfections, but ideas about some of the things you do in some situations. Okay? And now what I'm looking for is either correlations in your behavior with that, like, oh, that's like what he did when he told me the story of the narrowly missing the vehicle when he was traveling here. That's kind of similar. And all I do is go, well, that's interesting. I don't go, oh, under stress. Oh, definitely. Very definitely. I go, that's interesting. That's interesting. And I search for more. Yeah, I use it as an excuse for digging more. You might show deviations from the baseline. So I might go, wow, he's really deviated from what I saw him do when he was telling me about how he got here, and I think he was pretty calm. And I go, that's interesting. Let me dig a little deeper into that. But I never go, oh, for sure that means X means Y. Never do that. I just go, that's interesting. Yeah? Because what I'm trying to do is use your behaviors to lead me into the right questions, the right conversation, to get closer to the truth, because I'm getting you into more positions where you're more likely to be honest with me, or have to be honest with me. But none of it is really ultimately what we might call deception detection. It's I would just call it getting closer to the truth by using nonverbal communication to help me know where to have a conversation with you. Yeah. Again, I hope that makes sense, Tom.
Absolutely. I heard somebody saying we're not looking, so as behavior analysts, we're not looking for the lie, we're looking for the truth leaking through. Yeah, I like that one. I like that one. But coming back to stress, because you also mentioned it in the baseline context, stress is one other stereotypical cue that's often incorrectly associated with deception, right? But we all have stress, and even, in a criminal context, the criminal has stress for fear to being found out, but also the innocent person feels the stress for fear of not being believed. Yeah. Now, in business context, I can guarantee you there is stress, right? But again, there might be stress due to normal stress, right? What's associated with the situation, and then additional or different. It's not even different. It's probably the same type of stress. I don't know if there's a different types of stress. Yeah. What would be your recommendation? Yeah, if any. I know it's difficult. Yeah. What would be your recommendation, either in terms of approach or non-verbal signals, in order to?
Yeah, I'm still going to look. I'm still going to look out for stress, or maybe I would call it discomfort. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Comfort. I'm going to look for comfort and discomfort. Yeah. Okay. Comfortable, uncomfortable, and what I'm going to do is, when I see comfort or discomfort, whatever is more useful for me in order to move towards getting a conversation which is more accurate, more factual, is I'm going to use that to provoke questions. Yeah? And that might sound like this, Thomas. I might, in a negotiation, I might go, look, here's my number. Here's the number. Yeah? And I might look at your reaction. And your reaction may look comfortable or uncomfortable or something in between, or it may look to me like something else I could name. But let's just say it looks uncomfortable. Okay? What I might do is go, you know what, Thomas? It feels to me like you're uncomfortable with that number. Tell me about that. So what I laid down was a possibility. Yeah? Was a possibility. Now, you could accept that possibility and go, yeah, I am uncomfortable with that. And now I'm still watching your nonverbal communication to go, well, how comfortable or uncomfortable are you with telling me that you're uncomfortable with this? So I'm constantly taking in data, hearing what you're saying, taking in data to see whether we can get a more accurate conversation here. But here's what I'm not doing. I'm not there going, oh yeah, that made him uncomfortable. Definitely uncomfortable. I saw it for sure. And now I'm going to play out my tactic, my strategy for when Thomas gets uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you. But at least now I'm asking you with the potential, in my mind, the more likely potential that you were uncomfortable. Because I've seen you do these behaviors before when you were telling me the story about the narrow miss with the vehicle on the journey here. Okay? Now do the things, because you did the same behaviors, does that mean that, X is Y? And well, no. But it's more likely, and I'm going to test my assumption with a question. Again, I hope that's clear.
Absolutely. And I have a question for you, and I'm going somewhere with this question. Yeah. So
sure.
When you ask people, what do you think is the most truthful part of the body, right? Many people say face, eyes. I mean, you and me know it's not the case. From your perspective, what's the truth? What's the most truthful part of the body?
Yeah, I would. So yes, when people talk about the face is the most truthful, how would you ever lie? Like, how would you ever be a barefaced liar? Which all of us have managed to achieve in our lives, because how would we have got on in society if we weren't able to give a very convincing lie? Okay, so understand, your face will leak information as well as it will deliver it, and depending on the stakes will depend on how good a liar you are, and a whole bunch of other things, but stakes tends to do it. Okay, especially stakes around belief systems and value systems. Like, if I get anyway, what's the most truthful part? I would say the navel area. Okay, because your whole body is having to be attached to this center of gravity, and so and there's some really vulnerable organs here as well. And so what this is doing, where's this going? How open is this? How protected is this area here? Yeah. So that's one of the areas that I specifically like to look at. How is that orientating? Because I know that your brain is when it's lying, you're very well going to be able to go, okay, what's your mouth, what's your eyes, what's your hands? But I bet you're not thinking about your navel area at all. in any way whatsoever. So if this starts shifting around, yeah, if this starts moving around, like the whole body is going to follow it. So that's my take on that one.
We're going to come to the underbelly in a moment when we're going to discuss evolutionary psychology, which I really love. Yeah, but someone told me quite a while ago. Yeah, the further away from the brain, the more honest the body becomes, simply because we exercise less and less control over it. Now, since I know that, and maybe I should give you a picture. Yeah? In my working environments, the conference settings and conference tables are set in a way, it's a roundish way, but the opposite side, the underside of the table is actually free. They only have such a kind of perforated metal sheet, so you can see but you can't. But in rough contours you can see the body shapes, right? And I have made it a habit of mine to look under the table in terms of seeing what people really do. And what I found, and I can only recommend this little exercise because you do it once and you will find a discrepancy between what's above the table and what's below the table. A person can seem absolutely in control and calm and composed on the surface, right? But you see a total different story underneath. Yeah. So that's a thing that I took away from you. Is that something that you discuss when you meet business leaders? You go into that kind of detail?
Yeah, well, certainly the majority of my work with business leaders is often around projecting the right body language in order to influence and persuade. And so one of the things I will do is help them lock their body into a position which is calm and assertive, yeah, and keep it there, so that somebody like you checking underneath the table, there is only the image that we want projected done under the table. Yeah, I'm also working on what they're doing with this torso area so that the whole body follows suit. Understand? I agree. This idea of furthest away from the brain, hardest to control. But then, how would you ever play soccer? How would you ever walk? I mean, it's this idea of, well, nobody's really in control of their feet. Well, totally in control of their feet. Yeah, totally in control of their feet. So it's the thing of, well, if I want to control them, I absolutely can control them. Yeah. Now we've got to think about what is even harder for me to control. Well, stuff which is attached not even really to the brain, but the kind of basal ganglia or the spinal area, which is responding in an embodied way to the whole environment around it at a speed that the brain can't really even comprehend. So that's where I want to look out for is this more torso area, and seeing what's happening in that, what's happening in the spine, what's happening, because the rest of it I can get people to control really, really well. Yeah, and I know probably others can as well. Whereas this navel area and the spine, the back, very, very vulnerable. So what's happening to that under stress and pressure is more where I'll look for.
Okay. I'm going to use a sentence of your last book as a segue into evolutionary psychology, right?
Sure.
I think you wrote, all body language is a display of power or a reaction to it, right?
Yeah.
On the surface, that's not really related to evolutionary psychology, but we can go there. But maybe you explain first.
Yeah, so I think what I say there is all body language is a result of a display of power or a display of power, and so we need to unpack a little bit what I mean by power. And what I mean is, like, all the stuff in the universe that can have an impact on you, both mentally and physically and spiritually and psychologically. It's like, our body is responding to that, or it's pushing out at that. Or coming away from that. It's moving towards or away. It's doing the approach or avoid response to all of that around it. Now, it's a very, very simplified model. So there's a potential that model is not entirely accurate. Though I find it pretty accurate. It's a pretty good place to pretty good place to start. Let me give you one example, is that both you and I, our non-verbal communication at the moment is a result, we're both displaying against the power of gravity right now, in that both of us are using the muscles in our spine to push, and our core here, to push up against gravity. Okay, if we stop doing that, okay, and we start to display how much more powerful gravity is, well, I'll just allow that to happen in my body right now, and you'll notice that there's a whole what we would call cascade effect that happens around that if I allow that to happen. And if I display against gravity as I'm doing right now, there's a cascade effect. A whole bunch of things start happening around that. So that's really what I mean, is you've got to look for the power around you and go, how are they responding to that power, or how are they trying to make that power respond to them? Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And to use it as a segue into evolutionary psychology. Yeah? So power, maybe I should step a step back. So there is still today, there are a number of scientists who claim we are born as blank slates, right? Which is quite surprising in our time and age. Yeah? So for me, making this statement is like saying the Earth is flat, or the sun is revolving around the Earth. It's so far off. Yeah, it's definitely a combination between nature and nurture. Yeah, sure. And especially body language. I started first with body language and then with evolutionary psychology. Yeah? Once you see body language via the lens of evolutionary psychology, suddenly certain things make sense. And it's so clear that in my mind, I do not understand how it's possible that you can contest such clear evidence, right? So what's your point of view here?
Yeah, well, obviously, I would count myself as an evolutionary behavioral psychologist. So everything that I talk about is from an evolutionary lens. Everything, which for me is this, is that all behaviors are for benefit. Every one of them is about how do I gain a benefit. Now, to other people, they might see my behaviors and they might go, that's really annoying. I don't like that. Well, it wasn't for you. It was for my benefit. Okay? And you might go, well, then how do you fit into society? Well, yeah, I clearly don't fit into your society. Okay? There isn't just one global society. There's groups and there's cultures and microcultures and groups and all kinds of stuff whereby which is part of our evolution as social mammals. So we are not individuals. We are members of groups. When we try and exist as an individual, usually there is either something fundamentally wrong with our psychology, and we're an outlier in that sense, or we don't survive very long. Like, it doesn't work for us. Think about it. How long could you survive without your best friends and family? Like, how long would you keep going for? Until either, cold starvation, a deprivation of something, or just suicide gets you because you are just lonely. Okay, it's just horrible existence. You've got no friends and family. So with social mammals, that's part of our evolution as well. So everything comes from this evolutionary lens of all behaviors are for our benefit. They just don't benefit everybody, so they look bad to other people, but they're good for us. And sometimes we can it's good to work out why that behavior exists from that evolutionary standpoint, because then people are more understandable. And if we understand them more, we can usually get on better with them. And if we can get on better with them, then it's more likely we can co-opt with them and they can co-opt with us, which is one of the things we're trying to do. We survive better when we team up. When we're alone, we don't survive very well. Teams do better than individuals every time. Okay, I know you'll have some outlier examples, but they're outliers. Teams do better than individuals every time. So this blank slate thing, I don't know where people get that idea from. It's beautifully romantic And I understand it's romanticism, but it isn't accurate at all. We are in no way a blank slate. We are born with many of the instruments and instincts that we're gonna need. We're born with language. We just don't know which language we're going to speak or which ones we're going to speak. But the building blocks of language we have in us. We don't learn the building blocks. They're already there. Yeah.
Noam Chomsky is proponent of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That idea, the syntax is already there. The building blocks are there. That's why in children, their language capacity develops. They don't learn the language capacity. They just learn which language they're going to speak as the development, as the brain suddenly goes, okay, now's the time to deliver language. Because if you don't, it's going to be difficult. Not impossible, just be really hard. Let's make it easy. Let's do language. I mean, that's why we've got this big neocortex. Yeah, it's because the parts of the brain that are going to do language have already developed in there. Okay, they're already kind of ready to go. Anyway, hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. I know we are slightly over time, and I don't want to overstay my welcome. I have two more little things. Yeah. In regards to neocortex, also brainstem, limbic system, neocortex, right? Deception, also the fear triggers come from fight or flight, brainstem, emotions, limbic system, right?
Yeah.
So in a stressful or deceptive context, those are the two brain areas which kind of trigger the behavior that then the neocortex tries to suppress, reason, right? So coming back into my last question for you today. Knowing that you have spoken to many business leaders, what's your recommendation? Again, very specific, business context, negotiation. You have the feeling something is not quite right here. And I know I make it very broad and there is no clear-cut answer, but something tangible maybe that you can offer our listeners here to take away in the next negotiation already.
Yeah, ask more questions. Use your neocortex. That's all. Yeah, that your instinct will convince you that you're right, and you're either right or wrong or something in between. Now, if you're right or wrong or something in between, and you're not negotiating over anything with any value, who cares? Like, be wrong, be right. It doesn't matter. It makes no difference. Okay, but if you are negotiating over something which has real value, you want to know that you are more likely right than wrong, which means you need to go and gather evidence with your neocortex. You need to use what we'd call the intelligence system, which means finding data, putting it together in a pattern that says there is meaning there. There's observable meaning in this. There's a reality there. Or we think we're closer to reality. That's what an intelligence agency does, is it takes raw data and it goes, I think we've found meaning or we're closer to a reality around this. So we can now make good decisions or better decisions around this. And so, so I get a feeling. I'm in a negotiation with you, Thomas, and I don't know why, but I'm like going, this feels odd. This feels odd. Yeah? And I might go to myself, where did it start feeling odd? Where did it start feeling odd? Well, it was feeling odd when we started to talk about X. All right, let's go back to there. So I'll say, Thomas, let me just stop you there. I want to go back and talk about X. Just tell me about that again, would you? So now I'm going over the same data and I'm going, let's explore more. So now I'm going to take my feeling and I'm going to hang it on a shelf for a bit. That's an assumption. I'm going to hang it on a shelf and I'm going to start really trying to work out what is the information, what is the data I can get from you. How can I now do critical thinking? I can come back to that later, okay? Or I can combine the two, yeah? Or I can completely shelve it and go, God, my instinct was nonsense there. Okay, I got some really strong data. He literally just passed me the numbers We phoned the bank manager. Like, the money is there, right? I've got enough data that says he has the money. Okay, I've got all the data. It's, everybody. If he doesn't have the money, everybody's lying to me. And so if everybody's lying to me, like, I got a much bigger problem than just this guy in the room. Like, we've got a society problem going on here. Because I had a verified information from a manager of a bank that there is money there. Anyway, I hope that makes sense to you in that, sure, use your instinct, but don't go with your instinct necessarily. Use the instinct to provoke more questions.
Okay. Lastly, what do you offer for companies, larger companies? What exactly is you doing? What exactly, in the context, again, larger corporations, and how can they best come in touch with you?
Yeah, so look, the work that I do is really on how you stand out, you win trust, you gain credibility every time you communicate. And so let's put it in that negotiation situation. How would you walk into a negotiation and make others comfortable so they're more likely to be honest with you, even if they don't want to be, even if it's to their advantage that they are dishonest with you? Something in them, their instinct, starts to go, you know what, I'm just going to tell Thomas what's going on here, because I think it feels like it would be more useful. They start to move off of their strategy because your strategy feels more comfortable, feels more genuine to them, feels more of an opportunity. So how do you use your non-verbal communication and your verbal communication to create a space of opportunity for people so they join and co-opt with you in a more honest way? Yeah, how can you use non-verbal communication and the observance of that to do better critical thinking? For sure. Classic ideas of deception detection? No, go somewhere else for what you think, for how useful you think that would ever be to you. When people ask me for that, I go, you know what, that stuff's really interesting, but we find it's not that useful for you. Here's the stuff that's useful, okay? Delivering non-verbal communication, creating an environment where people want to be more honest with you, and using critical thinking to think better about people, incorporating all of that into your negotiation strategy. And you can find me at truthplane.com, TRUTHPLANE, truthplane.com, and you find out more about me there.
Perfect. Mark, great. Really great talking to you. Yeah.
My pleasure.
So,
my pleasure.
Was my absolute pleasure.